General Vexithera looked at the holographic display with amusement. The third planet from the yellow star was covered in blue and green, with white clouds swirling above its surface. It looked pleasant enough, but the beings living there were nothing special. "Show me their ships again," she said to her aide. The display changed to show crude metal vessels floating in the darkness of space. They moved slowly, pushed by flames coming from their rear ends. Some had spinning sections to create fake gravity. Others were just boxes with engines attached. "These are their most advanced warships?" Vexithera asked. "Yes, General. They call them battleships and carriers. Our scouts counted maybe 300 of these vessels in their entire star system." Vexthara's mouthparts clicked together in what passed for laughter among her species. The Kethvar had been building living ships for 10,000 years. Their vessels grew from biomatter, healed themselves when damaged, and could think independently. A single Kethvar cruiser could destroy 100 of these human metal boxes. "What about their weapons?" she asked. "Primitive kinetic projectiles and nuclear devices. No energy weapons. No biotechnology. No psionic capabilities at all." The general walked to the large window of her command ship. Outside, the stars looked back at her. Each one represented worlds the hegemony controlled. 12 different species had joined together under Kethvar leadership to rule this part of the galaxy. They had the best technology, the strongest military, and the smartest leaders. "Have they achieved faster than light travel?" Vexthara asked. "No, General. They are stuck in their home system. Some of their probes have reached nearby stars, but those journeys take decades." "Perfect." Vexithara turned back to the display. "And they have the trilithium deposits we need?" "Yes. The third and fourth planets have enough trilithium to fuel our biofleet for centuries. The deposits are pure and easily accessible." Vexthara nodded. Trilithium was essential for their living ships. It powered their healing systems and fed their growth chambers. Finding such rich deposits was rare. Usually, the hegemony had to negotiate with other advanced species to get what they needed. But these humans were barely more than animals. "Have we tried communication?" she asked. Our diplomat sent standard greeting messages. The humans responded with questions about trade and cultural exchange. They seem excited to meet other intelligent life. "How touching." Vexthara's voice carried no warmth. "They think we want to be friends." She called up the file on human biology. The creatures were small, soft, and fragile. They had no natural weapons like claws or poison. Their brains were primitive compared to Kethvar neural networks. They lived for barely 100 years and spent most of that time sleeping. Most importantly, they had never fought a real war. Their conflicts were small affairs between groups on their own planet. They used simple weapons and basic tactics. They had no experience with space combat or alien technology. "Recommendation?" Vexthara asked her military advisors. "Standard extermination protocol," replied Admiral Zeph Korin. "Send one battle group to eliminate their space forces. Bombard their major population centers. Harvest the trilithium while their civilization collapses. Time estimate? 6 months, General. Maybe less if they surrender quickly." Vexithara looked at the intelligence reports again. Humans seemed to have one interesting trait. They were surprisingly creative for such a primitive species. Their art and entertainment showed wild imagination. But creativity meant nothing without the tools to use it. "Very well," she decided. "Admiral Zeph Korin, take the devouring silence and 2 escort vessels. Eliminate the human threat and secure the trilithium. Try to preserve the infrastructure if possible. Just 3 ships, General? More would be wasteful. These creatures have never faced real military power. Once they see what our biotechnology can do, they will surrender or die quickly." Zeph Korin bowed his head. "As you command." The briefing ended and Vexithara remained alone with the star charts. She had conquered 17 different species in her military career. Each time followed the same pattern. First came fear when the aliens saw hegemony ships. Then came desperate resistance using whatever weapons they had. Finally came surrender when they realized how outmatched they were. Humans would be no different. If anything, they might surrender faster than most. Their communications showed they valued individual life more than honor or territory. They would probably give up the moment they realized the fight was hopeless. 3 days later, Admiral Zeph Korin's task force departed for the human system. The devouring silence was a magnificent creature. 1 kilometer long, its living hull pulsed with bioluminescent veins. Sensor tendrils swept through space, tasting radiation and gravity waves. Weapon pods along its sides could fire concentrated dark matter that would tear apart any conventional ship. The escort vessels were smaller, but equally deadly. They moved like hunting beasts, their biohulls shifting color to match the darkness of space. Together, the three ships had enough firepower to sterilize every planet in the human system. As the task force entered hyperspace, Vexithara reviewed the tactical plans one more time. The humans had concentrated most of their forces around their homeworld and a few nearby planets. Their communication networks were centralized and unencrypted. Their military command structure was clear and easy to target. It would be a simple operation: destroy their space forces, eliminate their leadership, and demand surrender. Any planets that resisted would be bombarded until they submitted. The surviving humans could be relocated to work camps while hegemony mining vessels extracted the trilithium. Vexithara had seen it happen many times before. Species that seemed proud and independent quickly became broken slaves when faced with overwhelming force. Humans would learn what every other race had learned: the hegemony always won. She closed the tactical files and looked out at the stars again. Soon there would be another victory to add to her record. Another species brought under hegemony control. Another step toward total galactic dominance. The only question was whether humans would die fighting or die surrendering. Either way, they would die. What Vexithara did not know was that human creativity extended far beyond art and entertainment. For the past 50 years, human scientists had been working on projects their governments kept secret. Faster-than-light communication, advanced materials research, artificial intelligence development. Most importantly, humans had been watching the stars and wondering what they would do if something dangerous came from the darkness. They had made plans. They had built weapons. They had prepared for war against enemies they had never seen. Admiral Zefkorin's ships were traveling toward Earth, confident of easy victory. But the humans were already tracking their approach through sensor networks spread across their solar system. In hidden bunkers and secret laboratories, human military leaders were implementing contingency plans decades in the making. The hegemony was about to learn something new about creativity. In the hands of a species that had spent its entire history fighting wars, imagination could be the deadliest weapon of all. The task force dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the human system. Admiral Zefkorin looked at his sensors and saw exactly what the intelligence reports had promised. Primitive metal ships, simple space stations, a civilization that had barely learned to leave its home planet. Begin standard approach, he ordered. Broadcast surrender demands on all frequencies. The devouring silence moved toward the inner system, its living hull rippling with anticipation. In a few hours, this would all be over. Zefkorin had no idea that humanity's real test was just beginning. Admiral Zefkorin stood on the bridge of the devouring silence as it entered the human solar system. The bioship's sensors swept through space, analyzing everything they found. The intelligence reports had been accurate. Human technology was primitive beyond belief. "Look at this," his tactical officer said, pointing at the display. "Their largest space station is just metal tubes bolted together. No biological components at all. How do they repair damage? They probably throw it away and build a new one," Zefkorin replied. Wasteful creatures. The human homeworld grew larger on the screen. Blue oceans reflected sunlight while white clouds drifted across brown and green continents. It looked peaceful and defenseless. Perfect for conquest. "Admiral," the communications officer announced, "we are receiving a transmission from the humans." "Put it through." The main display flickered and showed a human female in a military uniform. She had short gray hair and steady brown eyes. Behind her, Zefkorin could see the cramped bridge of a human warship. Everything looked ancient and crude. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Nations Space Command," the human said. "You have entered our system without permission. State your intentions." Zefkorin activated his translation matrix and replied in the human language. "I am Admiral Zefkorin of the Kethavar hegemony. Your species will surrender all trilithium deposits and submit to immediate extermination. Resistance will only increase your suffering." The human admiral stared at him for a long moment. Then she said something that surprised him. "This is our home. Leave now or we will make you leave." Zefkorin's crew erupted in clicking laughter. The sounds echoed through the bioship's living corridors. Even the ship itself seemed amused, its hull patterns shifting to brighter colors. "Did she just threaten us?" the tactical officer asked. "I think she did," Zefcorin replied. "How wonderfully absurd." He opened the channel again. "Human Admiral, your entire fleet could not damage one of our ships. We have weapons that can destroy planets. Your threats are meaningless." "Then you have nothing to worry about," Admiral Chen replied. "Come and take our home if you can." The transmission ended. Zefcorin stared at the blank screen, puzzled. Most species began negotiating at this point. They offered tribute or asked for mercy. They tried to bargain for their lives. But this human had simply issued another challenge. "Perhaps they do not understand," his communications officer suggested. "Their technology is so primitive they may not comprehend our capabilities." "Then we will demonstrate," Zefcorin decided. "Target their largest space station and fire one warning shot. Let them see what real weapons can do." The devouring silence aligned its primary weapon pod. Dark matter collected in the biocannon, creating a sphere of absolute darkness. When fired, the shot would punch through the station like it was made of paper. Before Zefcorin could give the order to fire, his sensors detected movement. Dozens of small craft were launching from the human station. They accelerated toward his task force on trails of chemical flame. "What are those?" he asked. "Fighter craft," the tactical officer replied. "Primitive but numerous. Maybe 50 units incoming." Zefcorin watched the approaching fighters with interest. They were tiny compared to his bioships, like insects attacking a predator. Their weapons were simple kinetic projectiles and explosive missiles. Nothing that could threaten a hegemony vessel. "Let them come," he said. "When they see their weapons are useless, they will retreat. Then we can proceed with the conquest." The first wave of human fighters reached the devouring silence and opened fire. Projectiles bounced harmlessly off the biohull. Missiles exploded against the ship's living armor without causing damage. The fighters circled like angry insects, firing everything they had. Zefcorin was about to order them destroyed when something unexpected happened. One of the fighters accelerated directly toward his ship's sensor array. Instead of pulling away at the last second, the pilot maintained course and crashed into the sensitive equipment. The explosion was small, but it damaged an important sensor cluster. Before Zefcorin could react, 2 more fighters performed similar attacks. Both pilots died in the collisions, but they took out additional sensors. "What are they doing?" the tactical officer demanded. "Suicide attacks," Zefcorin said slowly. "They are killing themselves to cause minor damage." More fighters slammed into his ship. Each impact destroyed the attacking craft completely, while causing only superficial damage to the biohull. But there were so many of them, and they kept coming. "This makes no sense," his communications officer said. "The damage they are causing is insignificant. Why throw away their lives for nothing?" Zefcorin was beginning to wonder the same thing. He had fought many species, but none had ever used suicide tactics from the very beginning of combat. Usually such desperate measures only appeared when a species faced total extinction. "Destroy the remaining fighters," he ordered. "End this foolishness." The devouring silence and its escorts opened fire with their bioweapons. Dark matter beams lanced through space, tearing apart the human fighters. But even as their craft exploded around them, the remaining pilots continued their attacks. They screamed battle cries over their communication channels, sounds of rage and defiance that the translation matrix could barely interpret. When the last fighter was destroyed, Zefcorin surveyed the damage. His ship had lost several sensor arrays and some minor weapon pods. Nothing that would affect combat capability, but still more damage than he had expected from such primitive opponents. "Admiral," his tactical officer said, "we are detecting larger human vessels approaching from the inner system." The display showed 6 human warships accelerating toward his position. They were bigger than the fighters, but still pathetically small compared to hegemony vessels. Their hulls were angular slabs of metal covered with weapon turrets and sensor arrays. "Shall we destroy them?" the tactical officer asked. "Wait," Zefcorin said. "Let us see what they do." The human warships spread into a loose formation and opened fire at extreme range. Their weapons were more powerful than the fighters had carried, but still primitive by hegemony standards. Kinetic projectiles and nuclear missiles raced toward the bioships. Zefcorin's vessels easily avoided the incoming fire. Their biohulls could shift and flex to minimize impact damage. Their living armor absorbed energy attacks without harm. The human weapons seemed almost laughably inadequate. But then something strange happened. One of the human ships accelerated directly toward the devouring silence, just like the fighters had done. Its captain was planning another suicide attack. "Destroy it before it reaches us," Zefcorin ordered. His gunners fired, and the human ship exploded in a brilliant flash of nuclear fire. But the explosion was much larger than expected. The ship had been carrying some kind of massive warhead, probably intended to damage the bioship's hull through close-range detonation. "Crude but effective," the tactical officer admitted. "They are willing to sacrifice everything for minimal advantage." The remaining human ships continued their attack, using conventional weapons while maneuvering for suicide runs. Zefcorin destroyed them one by one, but each battle took longer than expected. The humans fought with a desperation that surprised him. When the last human ship was eliminated, Zefcorin found himself troubled by what he had witnessed. The humans had shown no fear, no hesitation, and no desire for mercy. They had fought as if death was preferable to surrender. "Admiral," his communications officer said, "we are receiving another transmission from the human homeworld." Admiral Chen appeared on the screen again. Her ship's bridge showed signs of battle damage, but she looked calm and determined. "Congratulations," she said. "You destroyed one patrol group. We have 100 more waiting for you." "Your forces cannot defeat us," Zefcorin replied. "Why do you continue this hopeless resistance?" "Because this is our home," Chen answered.
"We will fight for every planet, every moon, every asteroid."
"You will have to kill every single one of us." The transmission ended again. Zefcorin stared at the screen, feeling the first stirrings of unease. He had expected quick surrender after demonstrating his superior firepower. Instead, the humans seemed more determined than ever. "Perhaps we should call for reinforcements," his tactical officer suggested. "Nonsense," Zefcorin said. "We are dealing with primitives. They have courage but no real capability. We will proceed as planned." But as the devouring silence moved deeper into the human system, Zefcorin could not shake the feeling that something was wrong. The humans were not behaving like any species he had fought before. Their willingness to die for such small gains suggested a mindset he did not understand. What kind of species valued death over surrender? What kind of warriors fought harder when facing impossible odds? And what did it mean that they called this place home with such absolute conviction? Zefcorin pushed these concerns aside and focused on the tactical situation. He had a job to do, and he would complete it regardless of human psychology. But deep in his mind, a small voice whispered that perhaps General Vexithera had underestimated these strange creatures. The bioship moved toward Earth, its living hull rippling with anticipation. Soon this would be over and the conquest could begin in earnest. At least that was what Zefcorin hoped. 3 years had passed since Admiral Zefcorin first entered the human system. What should have been a 6-month extermination campaign had become a grinding war of attrition that consumed resources and lives at an alarming rate. Zefcorin stood in his command chamber aboard the devouring silence, studying casualty reports that made no sense. His task force had grown from 3 ships to 27 as reinforcements arrived to deal with the human problem. Yet somehow, the primitives were still fighting. "Show me the latest engagement," he ordered his tactical officer. The holographic display recreated the battle from 2 days ago. Human ships had attacked a hegemony supply convoy near the asteroid belt. The enemy vessels looked different now, sleeker, more advanced. They moved with coordination that spoke of experienced crews and better technology. "How are they improving so quickly?" Zefcorin asked. "Unknown, Admiral. Our intelligence suggests they are reverse engineering captured hegemony equipment. But their adaptation rate exceeds all models." Zefcorin watched the replay with growing frustration. 3 years ago, human ships had been simple metal boxes with primitive weapons. Now they incorporated biotechnology elements, energy shields, and weapon systems that almost matched hegemony standards. "They should not be able to understand our technology," he said. "Their science is thousands of years behind ours." "Perhaps, Admiral, but they learn very quickly from their mistakes." The tactical display showed another disturbing trend. Human tactics had evolved from desperate suicide attacks to sophisticated strategy. They used hit-and-run raids, ambush tactics, and coordinated strikes that maximized damage while minimizing their own losses. "Admiral," his communications officer interrupted. "Captain Elena Vasquez is ready for interrogation." Zefcorin nodded grimly. 3 days ago, humans had successfully boarded and captured one of his escort vessels. The attack had been impossible. No species should have been able to penetrate bioship defenses with primitive equipment. Yet somehow a team of humans in simple pressure suits had done exactly that. The interrogation chamber was deep in the ship's living core. Captain Vasquez sat restrained in a biomechanical chair that interfaced directly with her nervous system. She was a small human female with dark hair and defiant eyes. "Begin," Zeph Corin told the Kethavar interrogator. The psychic probe activated, sending tendrils of mental energy into the human's mind. Normally, this process extracted all relevant information within minutes. Most species couldn't resist the invasive examination of their thoughts and memories, but something went wrong almost immediately. The interrogator stumbled backward, clutching his head and making sounds of distress. "Admiral, something is wrong with this creature's mind." "Explain." "Her thoughts are chaotic, illogical. When I try to extract military information, I get other things. Memories of childhood, songs, mathematical equations mixed with emotional attachments. It makes no sense." Zeph Corin approached the human prisoner. She was conscious and watching him with alert eyes despite the psychic intrusion. "What are you hiding?" he demanded. "Nothing," Vasquez replied in accented Kethvar. "You're just not smart enough to understand how human minds work." "Impossible. Kethavar neural networks are the most advanced in the galaxy. Maybe that's your problem," she said with a slight smile. "You think in straight lines. Humans think in spirals." The interrogator tried again, pushing deeper into her memories. But instead of military secrets, he found a bewildering mixture of contradictory information. Combat training intertwined with poetry. Engineering specifications mixed with religious beliefs. Tactical plans merged with recipes for food. "How do you function with such mental chaos?" the interrogator asked. "We call it creativity," Vasquez replied. "You should try it sometime." Zeph Corin ordered the session terminated when the interrogator began showing signs of psychological distress. In 30 years of war, he had never seen a Kethvar mind probe fail so completely. "Take her to a holding cell," he commanded. "We will try conventional interrogation methods." But conventional methods proved equally useless. The human seemed immune to pain, resistant to drugs, and utterly unwilling to provide any useful information. Worse, she began to affect the bioship itself. Her presence created areas of neural instability in the living vessel. Crew members working near her began experiencing strange dreams and irrational thoughts. After 2 weeks, Zeph Corin ordered Vasquez transferred to a different ship. Within hours of her departure, the devouring silence began to heal from whatever psychological contamination she had caused. "Admiral," his science officer reported, "we have completed analysis of the captured human technology. What did you find?" "Their ships are not built according to any logical design principles. They combine incompatible systems, use materials in ways that should cause structural failure, and operate through what can only be described as brute force engineering." Zeph Corin studied the technical reports. Human ships used biotechnology in crude but effective ways. They grafted living components onto metal frames without regard for aesthetic considerations or traditional engineering practices. The result was ugly but functional. "How do these designs work?" he asked. "Unknown. By all calculations, they should fail catastrophically, but somehow they continue to operate and even improve over time." The reports detailed other disturbing developments. Humans had learned to communicate with captured bioship components, convincing them to work despite being separated from their original vessels. They had developed weapons specifically designed to cause maximum psychological damage to living ships. Most alarming, they had begun creating hybrid human biotechnology that seemed to function better than pure hegemony designs. "Admiral," his tactical officer announced, "we have a priority transmission from General Vexithara." The main display activated, showing the general's stern face. Behind her, Zeph Corin could see the command center of her flagship. "Admiral, your situation reports are unacceptable," she began without preamble. "How have you failed to defeat a single primitive species in 3 years?" "General, the humans are not what our intelligence suggested. They adapt faster than any species we have encountered. Their tactics are unpredictable, and their technology improves at an impossible rate." "Excuses," Vexthara snapped. "You have 27 ships against a species that has never fought a space war. How is this even a contest?" "Because they enjoy it," Zeph Corin said quietly. "What?" "The humans enjoy fighting. The worse the odds become, the harder they fight. They do not seek victory in the traditional sense. They seek to cause as much damage as possible before they die." Vexithera was silent for a moment. That is irrational. Yes, General. Everything about humans is irrational, but irrationality seems to be their strength, not their weakness. The display showed another casualty report. Hegemony losses were mounting steadily, while human capabilities continued to improve. Ship construction time had been reduced from months to weeks. Weapon effectiveness had tripled. Most disturbing, human morale seemed to increase with each defeat. I am dispatching additional forces, Vexthara declared. 50 ships under Admiral Thexmoran. Between your forces and his, you will have enough firepower to sterilize every planet in their system. General, with respect, I do not believe this is simply a matter of firepower. Then what is it? Zephcoran looked at the tactical displays showing human positions throughout their solar system. In 3 years they had spread like a virus. Every asteroid had been fortified. Every moon had become a military base. Even empty space was filled with automated weapons platforms and sensor networks. They have turned their entire civilization into a military force, he said. There are no civilians in their system anymore. Every human from child to elder has been trained for combat. They do not have an army, they are an army. Impossible, Vexthara replied. No species can sustain total militarization. Humans can. They seem to thrive on conflict. The more we pressure them, the stronger they become. The transmission ended with Vexthara's promise that reinforcements would arrive within 1 standard month. Zephcoran was not optimistic about their chances of success. He had begun to suspect that the hegemony had made a fundamental error. They had assumed that humans were like other species, rational beings who fought for logical reasons like territory or resources. But humans seemed to fight for the simple reason that something needed fighting. That night, as Zephcoran reviewed intelligence reports in his quarters, he found a message from Captain Vasquez. Somehow she had managed to transmit it from her prison cell before being transferred. Admiral, the recording said, you wanted to know what makes humans different. Here's your answer. We don't fight to win. We fight to fight, and we're very, very good at it. The message ended with her laughter echoing through his quarters. Zephcoran sat in the darkness, wondering what kind of species found joy in warfare itself. Outside his window, the stars looked back at him with cold indifference. Somewhere among them, Admiral Thexmoran was approaching with 50 additional ships. Soon, the hegemony would have enough firepower to end this war through sheer overwhelming force. But for the first time in his military career, Zephcoran was not certain that force would be enough. General Vexithara arrived in the human system with the largest hegemony fleet ever assembled. 147 biocruisers, each one capable of destroying a planet, moved through space like a living constellation of death. Their combined firepower could sterilize entire star systems. She stood on the bridge of her flagship, the consuming darkness, and surveyed the tactical displays with satisfaction. Whatever had gone wrong with Admiral Zephcoran's campaign would be corrected through overwhelming force. Status. Report, she commanded. Admiral Zephcoran's remaining forces have joined our formation, her tactical officer replied. Combined fleet strength, 174 vessels. Enemy strength, approximately 800 human ships of various classes. Vexithera studied the enemy positions with interest. The humans had indeed spread throughout their solar system like a plague. Every major body was fortified and space itself crawled with automated defenses. But numbers meant nothing against superior technology. Quality assessment of human forces significantly improved from initial reports. They now use biotechnology components, energy weapons, and defensive systems comparable to our own. However, their ships remain primarily metal construction with grafted enhancements. Admiral Zephcoran materialized on the bridge through quantum transport. He looked exhausted, his usually vibrant bioarmor dulled with stress patterns. 5 years of fighting humans had taken a visible toll. General, he said with formal courtesy, I must brief you on human capabilities before we engage. Unnecessary, Vexthara replied. I have reviewed your reports. Impressive adaptation for primitives, but nothing that cannot be overcome with sufficient firepower. General, with respect, you do not understand what we face here. These creatures have fundamentally altered how they conduct warfare. They do not follow conventional strategic principles. Explain. Zephcoran activated a tactical display showing recent human attacks. They have abandoned traditional concepts of victory and defeat. Instead, they focus on causing maximum damage regardless of cost. Every engagement becomes a mutual destruction scenario. Casualties are inevitable in war, Vexthara said dismissively. Not like this. Watch this engagement from last month. The display showed a battle between 5 hegemony ships and 20 human vessels. The humans attacked in coordinated waves, each group sacrificing itself to damage specific targets. By the end, all human ships were destroyed, but they had eliminated 3 hegemony vessels and crippled the other 2. They lost 4 ships for every one of ours, Vexithara observed. Yes, but their losses were acceptable to them while ours were not. They can replace ships faster than we can. More importantly, their crews volunteer for these suicide missions. They compete for the honor of dying in combat. Vexithara studied the tactical analysis with growing unease. The mathematics were disturbing. If humans could maintain their current production rate while accepting massive casualties, they might actually achieve strategic victory through pure attrition. No species can sustain such losses indefinitely, she said. Humans can, Zefkorin replied grimly, because they do not see death in battle as a loss. They see it as the highest achievement possible. The fleet moved deeper into the human system, passing destroyed space stations and the wreckage of countless battles. The debris field told a story of 5 years of brutal warfare. But for every piece of human wreckage, there were fragments of hegemony bioships. General, the communications officer announced, we are receiving a transmission from the human homeworld. Admiral Chen appeared on the main display. She looked older now, her hair completely gray and her face marked by years of war, but her eyes remained bright with determination. General Vexithara, she said, somehow knowing exactly who she was addressing. Welcome to our solar system. I hope you brought more ships this time. Admiral Chen, Vexithara replied, your resistance ends today. Surrender now and your species may survive as slaves. Continue fighting and we will exterminate every human in existence. Interesting offer, Chen said with a cold smile. Let me give you our counter-proposal. Leave our system immediately and we might let some of you escape alive. The transmission ended before Vexithara could respond. She stared at the blank screen, amazed by the human's audacity. Did these creatures truly believe they could threaten a fleet this size? General, her tactical officer said, long-range sensors detect massive energy signatures throughout the system. The humans have activated every defensive platform simultaneously. The display lit up with thousands of contact points. Human fortifications on every planet, moon, and asteroid were powering up their weapons. Automated defense platforms drifted through space like deadly flowers blooming in the darkness. Begin systematic bombardment, Vexthara ordered. Destroy every human installation before proceeding to their homeworld. The hegemony fleet opened fire with devastating precision. Dark matter beams lanced through space, tearing apart human defenses. Biomissiles sought out enemy ships with predatory intelligence. Energy weapons carved through asteroid fortifications like they were made of dust. For 6 hours, the fleet advanced steadily through the human outer defenses. Thousands of automated platforms were destroyed. Dozens of fortified asteroids were reduced to glowing rubble. The humans fought back desperately, but their losses were enormous. Then the pattern changed. General, the tactical officer said with confusion in his voice, human resistance is increasing rather than decreasing. They seem to be bringing online additional defensive systems. Impossible. We have destroyed most of their installations. Yes, but new ones keep appearing, and their ships are attacking with greater coordination than before. Vexthara studied the tactical displays with growing alarm. The humans were indeed fighting more effectively as the battle progressed. Ships that had been hiding in the asteroid belt emerged to harass her flanks. New weapon platforms activated in areas that had been empty moments before. How many defensive installations do they have? She demanded, unknown. Every time we destroy a position, 2 more reveal themselves. It appears they have been building redundant systems throughout their entire solar system. The battle continued for 12 hours. Hegemony forces pushed steadily toward Earth, but the advance became slower and more costly with each passing hour. Human tactics evolved in real time, adapting to hegemony strategies faster than should have been possible. General, Admiral Zefkorin said quietly, I recommend we withdraw and reassess the situation. Unacceptable. We have the largest fleet in hegemony history. No primitive species can stand against us. But privately, Vexthara was beginning to understand Zefkorin's concerns. The humans were not fighting like any enemy she had faced before. They seemed to treat massive casualties as acceptable losses, while making every hegemony death feel like a strategic victory. As the fleet reached Earth's orbit, the scope of human preparation became clear. The planet itself had been transformed into a fortress. Every continent bristled with weapon installations. The orbital space was filled with defensive platforms, minefields, and automated fighting vehicles. Planetary analysis, Vexithara ordered. General, we are not detecting any civilian populations. The entire planet appears to be militarized. Every human settlement has been converted to military use. That is impossible. There should be billions of non-combatants. Negative. Our scans show approximately 8 billion humans on the planet, and all of them are registered as active military personnel. Vexithara stared at the data in disbelief. The humans had turned their entire civilization into a single military force. Every man, woman, and child was part of their war machine. There were no civilians to threaten, no innocent populations to use as leverage. Begin orbital bombardment, she ordered. If they want to fight, we will give them the war they desire. The hegemony fleet opened fire on Earth with weapons designed to crack planets. The surface blazed with nuclear fire as bioweapons tore through the atmosphere. Cities vanished in seconds. Continents shook under the impact of dark matter bombardment, but the humans fought back from every position. Children operated anti-orbital weapons with the skill of veterans. Elderly humans piloted kamikaze drones into bioship sensor arrays. Even as their planet burned around them, they continued to resist with absolute determination. General, the tactical officer reported with amazement, the humans are actually increasing their rate of fire. Planetary destruction seems to be making them fight harder. That makes no tactical sense. No, General, but they are doing it anyway. For 18 hours, the battle for Earth raged in orbit and on the surface. The hegemony fleet suffered heavier losses than any campaign in their history. Bioships designed to last for centuries were crippled or destroyed by human weapons. Crew members began showing signs of psychological stress from prolonged exposure to human irrationality. When the bombardment finally ended, Earth was a smoking ruin. The atmosphere glowed with radioactive fire. Oceans boiled from weapons impacts. No life should have been able to survive such devastation. But somehow human transmissions continued to broadcast from hidden bunkers deep beneath the surface. Their voices carried across space with unbroken defiance. Congratulations. Admiral Chen's voice echoed from speakers throughout the hegemony fleet. General Vexithara stood in the ruins of her command center, staring at displays that showed the impossible. The galaxy was lighting up with human contacts appearing from everywhere. Hidden colonies, secret fleets, and military installations that intelligence had never detected. How many? She asked her tactical officer. Current count, 1,400 human vessels of various classes. New contacts appearing every few minutes. General, they have been hiding throughout our territory for decades. Admiral Chen's image appeared on every functioning screen in the hegemony fleet. She was broadcasting from deep underground on ruined Earth, her face illuminated by emergency lighting. You wanted to see what humans do when you threaten our home, she said with cold satisfaction. Congratulations. Now you get to see what humans do when you destroy it. Vexithara opened a communication channel. Impossible. Your species has never achieved faster than light travel. Our intelligence confirmed this. Chen laughed, a sound without humor. Your intelligence was wrong about many things. We achieved FTL 70 years ago. We just didn't advertise the fact. Why? Because we knew this day would come. Humans have been watching the stars for centuries, wondering what we would do when something dangerous came from the darkness. So we prepared. The displays showed the true scope of human expansion. Colony ships had been launched in secret decades before first contact. They had established hidden outposts in systems the hegemony thought were empty. Most disturbing, they had been observing hegemony forces for years, learning their tactics and technology. Your Earth system was never our only home, Chen continued. It was our testing ground. For 8 years, we used your attacks to train our military, develop our weapons, and perfect our strategies. You taught us how to fight you. Admiral Zefkorin materialized beside Vexithara, his bio-armor dim with exhaustion. General, I tried to warn you. The humans do not think like other species. Explain this deception, Vexithara demanded, opening channels to Admiral Chen. Simple, Chen replied. We are a species that evolved from predators. Our ancestors survived by hunting things bigger and stronger than themselves. We learned to use tools, strategy, and cooperation to kill creatures that should have been able to kill us. You are primitives, Vexithara insisted. No. We are hunters, and you made yourselves our prey the moment you threatened our home. The first wave of human reinforcements arrived at the edge of the solar system. These were not the crude ships Zefkorin had fought for years. These vessels had been built specifically to kill hegemony forces, incorporating 8 years of hard-won experience. New human ships detected, the tactical officer reported. Design elements suggest they are purpose-built for anti-bioship warfare. Vexithara watched the approaching human fleet with growing dread. Their ships moved with predatory grace, using formations that spoke of experienced commanders and coordinated tactics. These were not desperate defenders, they were professional killers. All ships, prepare for combat, she ordered. General, Admiral Zefkorin said quietly, perhaps we should consider withdrawal. We have sufficient data to— We do not retreat from primitives, Vexithara snarled. But even as she spoke, she could see the truth in the tactical displays. The humans had superior numbers, better positioning, and 8 years of experience fighting hegemony forces. They had turned this entire system into a death trap. The human fleet attacked with devastating coordination. Their ships used bioweapon components in ways that violated every principle of proper engineering, but somehow they worked. Hybrid vessels that should have torn themselves apart instead moved like living predators through space. General, her science officer reported with amazement, the human ships are using our own biotechnology against us. They have convinced captured ship components to fight for them. How is that possible? Unknown, but they seem to communicate with bioship elements directly. Our living vessels are responding to human commands. The battle became a nightmare of friendly fire and confusion. Hegemony ships found their own biocomponents turning against them. Weapons refused to fire. Sensors provided false information. Life support systems began favoring human boarders over their own crews. They are inside our ships, Admiral Zefkorin observed with professional detachment. Not physically, but mentally. They have learned to speak to our biotechnology in ways we never imagined. Captain Elena Vasquez appeared on the communication channel, speaking from the bridge of a captured hegemony cruiser. Hello again, Admiral Zefkorin. Thanks for teaching us how your ships think. How did you escape? He asked. We didn't. You transferred me to 17 different ships over the years. Each time I learned a little more about how bioships function. Turns out they like humans better than they like you. The truth was devastating. Every human prisoner had been a spy, learning hegemony technology from the inside. Every captured ship had provided intelligence about bioship psychology. The humans had turned their defeats into intelligence victories. General, the tactical officer announced with barely controlled panic. We have lost 67 ships. Human losses, 12 vessels. Vexithara stared at the casualty reports in disbelief. The exchange ratio had reversed completely. Now the humans were destroying hegemony forces with minimal losses while their own capabilities continued to improve. This is Admiral Sarah Chen, came the broadcast from Earth's ruins. I want to speak directly to the Hegemony Council. I am General Vexithara. You will address your surrender to me. I'm not surrendering, Chen replied with cold amusement. I'm explaining why you are going to surrender to us. A new tactical display appeared, showing the wider galaxy. Human forces were emerging from hiding throughout hegemony space. Ships, stations, and entire fleets that had been infiltrating alien territory for decades revealed themselves simultaneously. 47 billion humans, Chen announced. That's how many of us you're really fighting. We've been spreading throughout the galaxy for 70 years, establishing colonies, building fleets, and preparing for this war. Impossible, Vexithara whispered. Your species thinks in terms of territories and resources, Chen continued. Humans think in terms of survival and revenge. You destroyed our homeworld, so now we're going to destroy your civilization. The scope of human preparation was staggering. They had established hidden bases in every major system. Their ships had been monitoring hegemony communications for years. Most terrifying, they had been studying the 12-member species of the hegemony, learning their weaknesses and developing specific weapons for each race. General, her communications officer reported with terror in his voice. We are receiving surrender requests from multiple hegemony member species. The Veltar Confederation has withdrawn from the alliance. The Mordesh Empire is requesting immediate peace negotiations. The coalition that had ruled the galaxy for millennia was collapsing as member species realized what they faced. Humans were not trying to conquer territory. They were trying to exterminate every species that had threatened them. "This ends now," Admiral Chen announced. "Every species that participated in the attack on Earth will face human justice. Every world that supported this war will burn. Every ship that fired on our home will be destroyed." "We can negotiate," Vexithera said desperately. "No," Chen replied. "You declared war on humanity. You chose extermination over negotiation. Now you get to experience what that actually means." Human fleets throughout the galaxy began their attacks simultaneously. They struck military targets with surgical precision, while broadcasting a simple message to civilian populations. "Your leaders started this war. Remove them and live. Support them and die." "General," Admiral Zefkorin said with quiet resignation, "I recommend we transmit our surrender immediately." "Never." "Then we will all die here," he said. "And our deaths will accomplish nothing except teaching humans new ways to kill our people." Vexthara looked at the tactical displays one final time. The mathematics were undeniable. Humanity had superior numbers, better technology, and 8 years of experience fighting hegemony forces. Most importantly, they had the absolute determination to fight until every enemy was dead. "How did we lose to primitives?" she asked. "We didn't lose to primitives," Zefkorn replied. "We lost to predators. We thought we were hunting prey, but we were actually teaching apex predators how to hunt us." The last transmission from General Vexthera was sent to the Hegemony Council as her flagship died around her. Human boarders had overwhelmed the bioship's defenses and were systematically executing the crew. "Council members," she said, as explosions echoed through the corridors, "I submit my final report on the human conflict. We made an error in classification. Humans are not a primitive species seeking resources. They are an apex predator species that views war as evolution." The transmission began to break up as human forces reached the command center. "Recommendation? Immediate species-wide surrender and acceptance of human terms. We are not equipped to fight a war against beings who treat death as victory and revenge as a religious obligation." The channel went dead as the consuming darkness exploded in brilliant nuclear fire. With it died the largest military force the hegemony had ever assembled.